The Veiltheri were the oldest carnivores in the known galaxy. They had no written poetry, no philosophy of beauty, no art. What they had was teeth, 17 rows of them, and a digestive system capable of breaking down silicon-laced bone. For 11,000 years, they had ruled the outer spiral as apex predators, feared by every species that had ever made first contact with them. Their warships did not carry diplomats. They carried chefs. To the Veiltheri, eating your enemy was not barbarism. It was civilization. It was the highest honor they could bestow on a conquered race. You were worthy of being consumed. They had eaten the Zarkai. They had eaten the Lamenthi. They had eaten 3 species whose names were now extinct, along with the species themselves. So when the Veiltheri fleet entered the Sol system and opened communication channels, the Galactic Union held its breath. Every species who had witnessed Veiltheri first contact knew the protocol. The losing party fed the winning party. The Union had sent its finest warships and lost them in 4 hours. Now came the dinner. Ambassador Celine stood in the forward chamber of the GSV Perseverance, watching the Veiltheri delegation board through the main airlock. She was 34 years old, dark-eyed, with the kind of stillness people mistook for fear. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. Behind her, through the galley door, she could hear the sound of knives. "They're early," she said quietly. "I noticed," said a voice from behind the door. The door opened. Orion stepped out, wiping his hands on a cloth tucked into his apron. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with burn scars on both forearms that he wore the way some people wore medals. He had cooked in the Martian colonies, in the orbital stations above Jupiter, in refugee camps where protein was measured by the gram. He had fed the dying and the grieving and the stubborn. He had once kept a supply convoy alive for 3 weeks by turning recycled algae and engine lubricant into something people actually wanted to eat. He looked at the approaching Veiltheri delegation, 6 of them, each standing nearly 3 meters tall, their scales catching the light like oil on water, and said, "Good. I wanted a few more minutes with the broth, but we'll manage." Celine stared at him. "Orion, those are the beings who just destroyed our 7th fleet." "I know." He looked unbothered. "You want to come taste something before they get here?" What?" "The sauce. I want a second opinion." She followed him into the galley because she had no better options and because, she realized, she had trusted Orion's instincts for 11 years and they had not yet killed her. What she walked into stopped her completely. The galley had been transformed. It smelled extraordinary, a deep, layered smell, dark and savory and somehow ancient, like the smell of something that had been alive for a very long time and was now, beautifully, something else. Every surface was covered in careful preparation. She recognized almost nothing. "What is that?" she asked, nodding at the central roasting spit. "Apex predator," Orion said simply. She blinked. Where did you even get a Veiltheri?" "Not a Veiltheri." He lifted a cloth, revealing what sat beneath. An enormous haunch, deep red-black, seared to a crust that looked like the surface of a struck match. "This is a Krethmaw, largest predator in the Veiltheri home system. They hunt them for sport. It's their symbol of greatness, the one creature they haven't fully domesticated." Celine stared. "You got a Krethmaw?" "I had it shipped from the Veiltheri outer colonies 2 months ago, when we first intercepted their fleet trajectory." He pulled the cloth back. "Cost me every favor I had and several I hadn't earned yet." But he picked up a small spoon, dipped it into a dark reduction sauce, and held it out to her. "Taste that." She tasted it. The flavor hit her in stages. First, iron, mineral, the honest taste of something powerful. Then warmth, building slowly, a spice she couldn't name that bloomed across the back of her tongue. Then something she could only describe as gravity, a depth that pulled the whole thing together. Her eyes watered slightly. "What did you put in this?" she whispered. "Veiltheri salt crystals, rendered Krethmaw fat, 3 herbs from their home world that their own hunters traditionally rub into the kill, and about 7 hours of patience." He replaced the cloth. "The Veiltheri believe that the way you prepare a predator reveals your relationship to power. If you fear the creature, you burn it to ash to erase it. If you respect it, you learn its nature and you transform it into something greater than it was." Celine looked at him. "You studied their food culture." "I study everyone's food culture." He said it with no pride, a simple fact. When a species eats, they tell you everything. What they value, what they fear, what they believe makes them worthy of survival. The airlock door hissed open at the end of the corridor. The Veiltheri delegation stepped into the Perseverance. Their leader, Veiltheri, had no formal title for what it was, but the translators called it a prime throat, was massive even by its species standard. It surveyed the room with compound eyes that moved independently. Its nostrils flared. And then something happened that Celine had never seen in any footage of Veiltheri first contact. It paused. Its nostrils flared again, more slowly this time. It made a sound, low, resonant, somewhere below normal human hearing, and the other 5 Veiltheri behind it went very still. Orion walked out of the galley. He was still wearing his apron. He carried nothing, held nothing. He walked to within 2 meters of the prime throat and stopped. He looked up at it. It looked down at him. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then Orion said, in carefully practiced Veiltheri, "You have traveled far. The hunt has been long. There is meat." The prime throat's 17 rows of teeth were all visible now. In any other context, this would have signaled immediate attack. Celine had her hand on the emergency bulkhead switch. But the prime throat's translator box crackled to life, and what came out was a single word. What? Not a threat. Not a challenge. Pure, undisguised bewilderment. What happened next became, in the centuries following, one of the most studied diplomatic events in galactic history. Orion served them the Krethmaw. He served it in courses, in the Veiltheri tradition, raw first, then seared, then slow roasted, each preparation building on the last, each one using herbs and techniques drawn from the Veiltheri hunter tradition that the creatures sitting across from him had not seen applied by non-Veiltheri hands in 11,000 years of contact with other species. He served it with the proper cuts, made in the proper order. He rendered the fat correctly, salted the marrow at the correct stage of heat, and presented the final course, the heart, traditionally the last and greatest portion, with the blade that a Veiltheri hunter would use laid beside it, handled toward the prime throat, as was custom. The Veiltheri delegation did not speak for 40 minutes after that. They ate. They ate with focused, silent attention, and Celine sat across from them and watched Orion refill their plates without ceremony, without performance, without fear. When the prime throat finally spoke, what it said made the translator pause twice before rendering it into standard. "You hunted this." Orion nodded. "You hunted this," the prime throat repeated, "and then you changed it. You transformed the kill. You made it into something greater." "That's what we do," Orion said. "We cook." Another long silence. "No species we have encountered," the prime throat said slowly, "has ever served us our own prey. Every species we have contacted has offered us their own flesh, or the flesh of their animals. Soft things, gentle things, food for the weak." It looked at the empty platter, then at Orion. "You served us a Krethmaw, prepared as our own hunters prepare it." But it paused, as if the concept was genuinely difficult. "Better." Orion didn't smile. He simply said, "You were hungry after a long journey." It seemed right. The Veiltheri fleet did not attack Earth. They sent a delegation instead, a formal one, with translators and cultural liaisons, and, notably, a specific request. They wanted Orion to teach their own chefs the 7-hour reduction technique. Celine filed the diplomatic report 3 weeks later. In the summary, she wrote, "The Veiltheri do not respect pleas, treaties, or shows of military force. They respect competence in the face of power. They respect those who look at the apex predator and see not a threat to flee from, but ingredients." The report was classified for 20 years, then became required reading at every diplomatic academy in the Union. Orion, when asked about it later, said only that the sauce could have used another 30 minutes. He was probably right.